Smoke drifted across the New South Wales countryside. Entire apiaries, thousands of buzzing colonies, were being destroyed in fire. Beekeepers stood helpless, watching their life's work vanish in plumes of gray. Some wept openly. Others stood in silence, fists clenched. This wasn't disease or accident. It was deliberate. Australia was at war, against an enemy no larger than a grain of sand. For decades, this continent had been the last sanctuary. While the rest of the world fought and lost against a tiny parasite called the Varroa destructor, Australia's bees lived free. They thrived. They became the model of what healthy colonies should look like. But in June 2022, everything changed. A single detection at the port of Newcastle ended the sanctuary. And what followed over the next 2 years was a battle unlike anything the nation's beekeepers had ever faced. This isn't just the story of insects. It's the story of farmers, families, and the food on our plates. It's a story of collapse, resistance, and, unexpectedly, renewal. Before we enter Australia's struggle, we need to understand the war already raging elsewhere. For decades, honeybee populations across North America, Europe, and Asia were collapsing. The causes were many: pesticides, shrinking habitats, climate shifts. But towering above them all was one villain: Varroa destructor. To the naked eye, the mite looks harmless, reddish-brown, tiny as a speck of dirt. But on the body of a honeybee, it's a vampire. It feeds on fat bodies and hemolymph, the bee's blood. Worse, it spreads lethal viruses, the most infamous being deformed wing virus. These hatch crippled, unable to fly, useless to their colony. An untreated hive can collapse in a single season. In temperate climates, even strong hives rarely last more than 2 or 3 years once infested. Across the world, beekeepers fought back with chemicals and breeding strategies. Some survived, many didn't. The cost of pollination rose. Entire industries trembled. But through it all, Australia remained untouched. Australia's defense wasn't luck. It was policy. Strict biosecurity laws, island geography, and rapid quarantine responses kept the Varroa mite out for decades. By the 2000s, Australia was the only continent still free of the parasite.
This wasn't just a curiosity, it was an advantage. Without Varroa, Australian beekeepers spent less on chemicals. Their honey carried fewer residues. Their hives became reference models for global research. Domestically, industries like almonds, macadamias, and blueberries thrived with healthy pollinators. Globally, scientists looked to Australian bees as the last blueprint for what normal looked like. For years, it seemed impregnable. But beneath the surface, experts warned it was only a matter of time. June 22, 2022. Port of Newcastle, New South Wales. During a routine inspection, officers spotted them. Tiny parasites clinging to European honeybees near the shipping terminal. Varroa destructor had arrived. The government moved fast. A 10-kilometer eradication zone was declared. Thousands of hives were locked down. Colonies suspected of infestation were destroyed. Beekeepers were banned from moving hives. Surveillance ramped up. GPS mapping, swarm tracking, citizen reports. Officials insisted, this is not a crisis, it's containment. But behind closed doors, they were terrified. No country had ever eradicated Varroa once it gained a foothold, and Newcastle wasn't just any port. It was a stone's throw from vast agricultural zones. It was a race against time. Think of it like contact tracing during a plague. Teams in protective suits inspected hives, prying open brood frames, looking for signs of infestation. Suspicious colonies were euthanized on the spot. Public awareness campaigns went nationwide. Town hall meetings warned hobbyist beekeepers. Permits were issued for hive destruction. The government poured resources into the fight. At first, hope flickered. Maps of the eradication zone showed a red circle, limited, containable. But weeks later, more red dots appeared. The circle grew. Outbreak zones multiplied. Why? Because bees don't respect borders. Some hives had already been transported for pollination contracts before the detection. Some had been sold. Wild swarms carried the mites invisibly. And because Varroa breeds inside capped brood cells, inspections often missed them. By the time symptoms appeared, it was already too late. Containment was slipping.
By late 2022, the map of infestations sprawled far beyond Newcastle. Surveillance teams were overwhelmed. Wild honeybees became uncontrollable carriers. Every feral colony was a hidden factory of mites. And Australia's warm climate only made things worse. Bees bred almost year-round, giving mites endless chances to multiply. The eradication program escalated. By mid-2023, it had become one of the most expensive agricultural pest control efforts in the nation's history. Between $101 and $130 million were poured into the operation. The strategy? Destroy everything infected. Entire apiaries were wiped out in a day. By July 2023, more than 30,000 hives had been euthanized. For beekeepers, it was devastating. One farmer recalled, "It felt like shooting my best friends." Others resisted, arguing the fight was futile. And maybe they were right. No matter how many hives were burned, new infestations kept appearing. Economically, the toll was brutal. Australia's honey industry, worth $150 million annually, stalled. But worse, the crops were at risk. Almonds, apples, blueberries, all depended on pollination. The 2023 almond season faltered as hive shortages and movement restrictions choked supply. Insurance didn't cover losses. Compensation was slow. Protests erupted. For many, it wasn't just the loss of bees. It was the loss of identity, tradition, and hope. By September 2023, reality hit. The government admitted what many already knew. Eradication had failed. The strategy shifted from destruction to management. Australia would no longer try to eliminate Varroa. Instead, it would learn to live with it, like every other country. It was a turning point. Training programs launched to teach beekeepers how to detect and manage mite infestations. Integrated pest management became the new national strategy. Miticides were approved under strict regulation, but for thousands of hobbyist beekeepers, it was too much. Many quit, unwilling or unable to adapt to the new world of constant monitoring and chemical treatments. Still, commercial operators pressed on. The fight wasn't over. It was just changing shape.
Then came a surprise. As months passed, beekeepers noticed something strange. Some colonies weren't collapsing. Instead, they were adapting. Workers groomed mites off each other more aggressively. Others removed infested brood cells before the mites could reproduce. These weren't accidents. They were traits known as Varroa-sensitive hygiene and grooming behavior. Around the world, beekeepers had bred for these traits over decades. Now, Australian bees were showing them naturally. Breeding programs sprang up to propagate queens from resilient colonies. The hope: build a new generation of bees tougher than the last. And there were other allies. Australia's 1,700 species of native bees, immune to Varroa, began filling gaps in pollination.
Farmers who once relied solely on honeybees started looking at these wild pollinators with newfound respect. The battle wasn't over, but the balance was shifting. By mid-2024, a year after the official shift from eradication to management, the worst-case scenarios hadn't come true. Losses were higher than before, but lower than feared. Beekeepers learned to monitor, treat, and adapt. Pollination services resumed, though in new ways. Farmers and beekeepers coordinated more closely. Native pollinators were supported through conservation programs. Urban beekeeping, once a niche hobby, exploded in cities like Sydney and Melbourne. Rooftop hives thrived with diverse forage and lower pesticide exposure. These colonies fed into breeding programs for resilient queens. Even technology joined the fight. States launched real-time mite tracking apps, letting beekeepers log infestations and treatments. Data flowed into national databases, helping scientists predict outbreaks. Meanwhile, researchers trialed biotech solutions, from RNA interference to probiotics designed to boost bees' immune systems against mite-borne viruses. Early results were promising. The industry that once braced for collapse was now evolving at record speed. By 2025, Australia's relationship with Varroa entered a new phase: resilience. It was no longer about survival, it was about innovation. Queen breeding programs expanded. Farmers diversified pollination strategies. Public interest in bees surged, with community gardens and pollinator-friendly plantings becoming the norm. What began as a nightmare invasion had become a catalyst for transformation. Australia, once the last safe haven, was now a leader in adaptation. Its response is helping rewrite the global playbook for living with Varroa. Looking back, the story of Australia's bees is more than agriculture or science. It's a parable of resilience. When the sanctuary fell, it felt like the end. But out of loss came adaptation. Out of crisis came innovation. The bees, as always, showed us the way. They didn't win by fighting harder. They survived by changing. And maybe that's the lesson for us, too. So, what do you think? Was Australia right to abandon eradication and embrace management? Could the bees' own resilience hold the key to their future and ours? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden dramas shaping our world.